Alicia. I would just like to say Mount Holyoke alum, so hi to all the Smithies, and hopefully there's some Mount Holyoke alums in the audience. Yay! Okay, and I'm also really, really psyched to see this much cosplay for Doctor Who. I've never been at any science fiction convention where I've seen this many Doctor Who related costumes, so thank you guys. I've been watching Doctor Who since about 1985, so I love the show. I've always loved the show, and I'm psyched that we get to focus on the women of Doctor Who, since there's never been a female Doctor, but so many of his companions and friends and people he interact with are women. So yay, I'm psyched we get to talk about this for about an hour.
I'm Elizabeth, and I've been watching Doctor Who since pretty much I watched the 4th and 5th Doctor, and then kind of fell away. Watched it, and then when they reinvented it, I was so excited, and so I'm a complete fan of New Who, and I'm looking forward to talking about the women. But I'm very, very cool.
Hi, my name is Patty. I am a fan of Doctor Who since 1986. Okay, I guess older than some folks of you. I got to know Doctor Who through local PBS, through Boston GBH, but also down in New York for WNET. And they had started just at the time that I found it. Previous to that, they'd only been showing the 4th Doctor and the 5th Doctor over and over again. At the time that I did, they were starting right from the beginning, so I was lucky enough to see from 1st Doctor onwards. I love the new series as well. I love the way it flows with continuity, and I like how they continue to have strong women characters, but they have actually had that from the beginning, believe it or not. It's not a new adventure.
I'm Caroline. I actually go UMass Amherst, so I'm Doctor Who was named out when I was born, so I'm only a New Who fan, but I'm obviously interested in it. I basically just troll Tumblr for my entire life. So I got into it.
So just like a couple quick a public service announcement, if you are not 100% up to date on Doctor Who and you don't want to hear any spoilers, I suggest you either block your ears or we are going to talk about right up until the most recent season, so I don't want to be at fault for totally ruining anything great about it. So basically we're going to just start talking about some of the older Who, some of the non-companions, some of the companions, and then lead right up to companions and non-companions of the newer stuff. So I'm going to go to Patty since she is like our expert on older Who.
Exactly. As I said, starting from the beginning of Doctor Who, the 1st Doctor, River Song, you've got some explaining to do, because this is actually the Doctor's fiancé. The Doctor accidentally made her a cup of coffee. That, in the Aztec culture, is how one becomes engaged. The story that she was in is the Aztecs, and she helped him get out of a very difficult situation that one of his companions had gotten him in, where his companion was mistaken for a god. She was one of the priestesses. She's a wise woman. She got engaged. She realized that she could not stay with the Doctor and he could not stay with her, so she did everything that she could, including using feminine wiles, to trick the guards to make sure that she was released.
That's William Hart.
That is William Hart, the very 1st Doctor.
I think they replaced that with when they're doing the retrospective.
Yeah,
Exactly. Trying to concentrate on one, you're going to see one story for any particular Doctor. The 2nd Doctor had strong women as her companions, and that would be something we'll cover later, but there is a particular woman who had no problem, and especially in the engineering school. Her name is Gia Kelly. The story is called The Seeds of Death. It is one of the stories that features the Ice Warriors, which I understand are going to be coming back in the new series. They're one of my favorite villains because they're a bit more layered than most. Gia Kelly is an administrator. She doesn't worry about just paperwork. She doesn't worry about getting things right. She will actually throw around in ducks and fix things and get dirty. And that is not always something in the swinging 60s you would see. She is with the 2nd Doctor, which would be Patrick Troughton, hero. The next one, the 3rd Doctor, is my Doctor. He's the one that I found first. And those of you who are fans of David Tennant should go back and watch the Third Doctor episodes. They have very parallel life trends, especially a little thing, you know, about being the lonely god and the Time Lord Victorious. It undoes doctors from time to time. So, the Third Doctor was the second longest run of the classic era. He ran for 5 years, so he ran into a number of different Master was invented as a foil to the Third Doctor, a sort of opposite number, and he would occasionally come to Earth, the Master would, because the Third Doctor was exiled to Earth, and he would try to do things to set up his own power base there, thinking the Doctor could not do anything about it. Oh, silly him. He also had a pattern that I don't see in the new series too much of trying to hypnotize people into obeying him. However, a few people can resist that hypnosis. Here is one of them. The White Witch of the Village of Devil's End. Her name is Olive Cawthorne. She does not stand for any guff. She will match semantics with the Third Doctor. She just doesn't put up with anything from anybody. Even if she seems flighty and fluffy, she is a contender in her own right. Anybody ever heard of somebody named Sarah Jane Smith? Sarah Jane Smith is a character who was created by a writer named Robert Holmes during the Third Doctor era. And she's a strong woman in her first story, but she's overshadowed by Lady Eleanor of Essex. You ever heard that expression, the iron fist of a velvet glove? She's the real person that runs the castle. She's the real person that beats the invading warlord. Even the warlord, he has to put her down in order to disguise how scared of her he is. Robert Holmes created a lot of great people. He created Sarah Jane Smith. He also created the Master. But Lady Eleanor of Essex is someone who we don't want to miss. She's very subtle about it, but she is very, very much a strong woman in her own right. The story she's in is called The Time Warrior, which is the beginning of the last season of the John Kirby era. You know, and Sarah Jane is one of those characters who has transferred through many doctors. My absolute favorite story for the Tom Baker era, and one of the ones that I was introduced to before I started watching regularly, is called The Seeds of Doom. The Seeds of Doom is set in a country house where you have a megalomaniac who wants to get rid of all animal life. You know, he loves his plants. He goes and sends a hired killer to Antarctica to steal a pod, just so he can see what happens. The Fourth Doctor, Tom Baker, and Sarah Jane have to find help to stop this guy. And who do they find but, again, another one of these mind like a steel trap, seemingly fluffy women. Her name is Amelia Ducombe. She's a world-famous painter of wildflowers. But she was somebody who could assemble a gun blindfolded in World War II. She is someone who had a lot of background. And the villain, who is normally cold and doesn't care about the government, doesn't care about the police, he's absolutely terrified of this little woman because she's landed gentry. That's just so scary to him. And even the hired thugs that he has, has to say yes ma'am, no ma'am. Very, very strong. There is something about Dr. Who and the last name of Tyler. I have no idea what that is. And the whole idea of rifts and weak points in time featuring the supernatural. That would be Martha Tyler in the story The Image of the Fendal, another Fourth Doctor story. She has the second sight. She sees things from beyond space and beyond time, but she uses it as a supernatural gift. And her idea of combating an eldritch abomination is to shoot it with a shotgun full of rock salt. She is definitely one of the cooler old ladies, and she has a motto that I've adopted. She's got a grandson, she's a great-grandmother. She says to her grandson at one point, there will be coming a time when I will be getting too old for this sort of thing. The fourth Doctor had the longest run, so of course he's going to have the strongest amount of companions. And he also has the strongest number of women. So this is the last one towards the end of the reign. He was accompanied by the first Romana, who was in a 6-story series called Key to Time, where they were finding an artifact to reset the core of the universe. And one of those pieces of the Key to Time ends up being a stone in a stone circle. And so, Professor Amelia Rumford is wondering, why are the stones always moving? It turns out the stones themselves, the ones that aren't part of the Key to Time, are an alien life form. So how does she cope with that? This 12-foot silicon life form. She decides to beat it with a policeman's truncheon. You know, no matter what the fourth Doctor says. Very, very, you know, feisty woman. I see a fifth Doctor in the audience. Very good.
There might be two of me.
There are two of you. Excellent. Different timelines, I'm sure. Parallel tracks. Anyway, the fifth Doctor had the most female companions with him at any given time. He had Tegan and Nissa, but he also met a few people. I had to concentrate on one though, because she was just so strong. She is the matriarch of the Kinda people. Her name is Pana, and she refers to all males as idiots, including the fifth Doctor. And if you know the Doctor and his ego, you can understand, hey, you know, I'm not used to being called an idiot. I'm not used to be the one not having all the answers. Well, she puts it in this one. My partner, who is the one who introduced me to Doctor Who, and I, when we were putting this together, we found a very interesting parallel. After the fifth Doctor, all of the women, up until the ninth Doctor, all of the women who aren't companions suddenly are antagonists or outright villains. It's a very interesting thing. We hadn't put our finger on it until we were putting this together. And so, it's just an interesting psychological thing when you see the classic series, you know, the change in direction. I'd like to swing back for the new series. I really do. They're not all out and out bad, but they're definitely not aids to the Doctor. So the sixth Doctor in the Mysterious Planet, which is part of Trial of the Time Lord, there's Queen Katrika of the Free. While she's a bit pig-headed and closed-minded, you have to give her some credit because she essentially shaped a post-apocalyptic world, you know, got people to organize to survive. It's not so bad. But she goes and puts her head up against technology she doesn't understand, and that is, you know, her downfall. She should have listened to the Doctor. In that case, sometimes he was the correct voice of authority. The seventh Doctor is one of my favorites, and this is the last person we're going to be discussing. Again, antagonist, but not outright villain. Yes, she did want to conquer galaxies. Yes, she wanted revenge on Arthur. This is Queen Morgane, but she is Morgane of an alternate dimension, where the King Arthur mythos lives out with, you know, space travel, ray guns, etc., etc. She has callousness where she will just kill someone out of hand, and then as a sense of balance and fair play, she will go and heal someone, you know, of long-term disability. And if you know the Brigadier, who has been, you know, with the Doctor since the second Doctor onward, and he's a lifelong warrior, you know, he's grown from just being a follower's guide to being a savior of the universe like the Doctor is. Morgane treats him as an equal, and that says a lot as well. It's two warriors coming face to face, you know, in battle, etc., etc. The Doctor is known to Morgane, but she is not with him. At some point, the Doctor actually becomes Merlin in this other dimension. He has no idea when or where, and that's a mystery that we never followed up on. We have a few honorable mentions among the, yes?
I'd also like to mention Jean Marsh, who plays Morgane, and there also say the first Doctor Who companion ever died.
Yes. During the first Doctor story, there was a long 12-part series called The Dalek Master Plan, and Jean Marsh played Sarah Kingdom, who was a sort of, Secret Service security officer who thinks that, her life is the way it should be. Of course, she sees how, civil relations is. She goes, travels with the Doctor for a time against the Daleks, and then she does die during the course of the story. Jean Marsh has, played many, many characters of the British television history. You've probably seen her in many things. She's just great at that. Okay.
Now that I'm done choking.
And we'll be able to pass those around. So
Yes.
who is next?
That leads right into, I have 3 on my list of old classic Who companions that I definitely thought worth mentioning. The first being Susan Foreman, the Doctor's granddaughter, which we found out recently. A cool thing about that was, I guess the big mystery was like, why is she a Time Lord? Is she not? Because she's clearly related to the Doctor. Recently, upon research, we found out that the reason they called her, at least in the writer's eyes, they thought it was strange for an older man to be traveling with a young girl, so that they just wrote in his granddaughter. So
Yeah, I always thought it was cool. Yeah. I always thought it was cool, and I have to say that I always took their word for it. And it was nice to hear in one of the new anniversary TV specials that the writers said the same thing. They're like, Susan said she was the Doctor's granddaughter. Why do we have any reason to think she would lie? So I'm like, I'm going with it. It's canon. I've always felt that she was the Doctor's granddaughter. And they do talk about it in I think it's the Dalek Invasion of Earth, where the Daleks are drilling to the core of the planet. They want to throw a bomb in there and blow it up and kill all the humans. Susan falls in, it's Susan's last story. She falls in love with a human freedom fighter who's working against the Daleks. And she decides she wants to leave the Doctor and stay on Earth and marry this man. And they have a conversation where, the way I remember it was that he was basically saying to her, you're going to outlive this guy, which I assumed was, she's a Time Lord, and, and that, and so are you really sure you want to give up, being able to travel the universe and, all this stuff for this guy? And she's like, yes, I do. Yes, I do. So I've always kind of wondered, like, wow, wouldn't it be great to revisit that? Because, like, would she, after he died and after, as she starts, like, losing people, would she really want to continue staying? Or would she start, like, kind of looking for a way to get off the planet or do something different or bigger? And I always thought that was cool because what I really loved about Susan is that, this was 1963, and you had a strong, intelligent woman. You had 2 intelligent women who were traveling with the Doctor, both Susan and her teacher, Barbara. Like, it was just, I loved it, and so that was something that I just want to, like, recognize, that this was 1963 and this was happening, so I just thought that was cool.
No? I do have a theory about Susan, but nobody's ever confirmed it for me. The end of time stories, I always thought she was the serious woman that kept something forward, because they kept drawing parallels between Wilfred and his granddaughter.
I think at some point it's confirmed that was actually the Doctor's mother.
Right, but I prefer my theory.
For your theory too.
Before they keep thinking about River, I thought she was in the astronaut suit too. I thought it was
I do think that in the there are a series of radio plays and audiobooks and things that I believe in that. That's where both Susan and Romana come back, and I believe, for the Time War. So I'm pretty sure that they dealt with that in there, but I haven't read those.
In that they had ran into Susan again and met his great grandson, her son. So they've been dealing with her in the audio plays.
And the audio plays are really, really cool. So if you get a chance to check them out, like, they're awesome to just listen to. I went through a whole season of them, in very short order. So definitely check them out. And they also have some really strong female companions and some interesting, like, not typical ones. So yeah, definitely check those out.
Eccleston mentioned in like a brief, it was like a throwaway line, but he said at one point, I was a father once and a grandfather, but no more. So they were trying to like, oh, is
Yeah.
it?
No, he says it during the Empty Child to Dr. Constantine.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Needless to say, we have to mention Sarah Jane. I see the whole room. When you say Sarah Jane, the whole room goes, yay! Sarah Jane's probably, at least for me, with trying to get into the older stuff, Sarah Jane's like the most, everybody knows who Sarah Jane is. Everybody.
I think because she came back.
Probably.
I actually didn't know, I hadn't actually seen any of her episodes. I came up on her late. And so, for me, it was Romana and his other.
Which Romana?
But I prefer the second.
That's next on my list.
That's the next on the list. So, my introduction to her wasn't until her later appearances. But I think it's a very interesting character.
What I find interesting is they tried to give her her own series twice. The first one fit, the pilot failed, it was like K9 and Company. But it basically was exactly the same idea as Sarah Jane Adventures. The second time, I didn't hate it.
Who I just recently
This is the first
discovered.
Romana,
I
Mary Tam. And then there was the second Romana, who's my favorite, Lala Ward. Lala Ward.
Yeah. I will say, her regeneration sequence.
I was just gonna bring that up.
Yeah. You wonder where you were.
Well, we should both. I guess it was funny. I had to, ask my husband the other day because he was more familiar with it. I would say, so what was the big deal about the Romana thing? And it's like her regeneration was kind of like comical. Where for me, I always felt like regeneration was kind of like a big deal. Like it was almost. It's funny when I got really into David Tennant for a while. And when you knew like the end was coming, I always said like, oh, it's like a breakup. Like it's coming. It's coming. And every time, so you expect it. So it's kind of like sad, but it's kind of like exciting because someone new is going to be coming in. So for Romana's regeneration to be like, how about this? How about this? How about I
kind of like it because for me it says that the doctor is bad at regenerating. Ginger, he just put his mind to it. Because there's people I've seen it, she's like, oh, what about this buddy? What about this buddy? One time she actually comes out as 4, and then like, no, I don't like this one.
Yeah. And I too love the, like the doctor's there's always been that issue of, which I love, of him, and sometimes playing off his companion, sometimes doing with them, but that, him being the voice of morality. And when she comes out as Lala Ward, and Lala Ward had just, 6 episodes before played the princess in the last Key to Time episode, and so, they knew that this might be a problem for the audience. So the doctor actually has to say to her, you can't, that's somebody else's body. And she's like, I don't care. So it's like, it's fine, nobody will ever know. So, it was like, okay, so it was pretty comical. But I thought it was pretty cool because you're right, we never see that. But I love that idea of like, he can't fly the TARDIS. River flies the TARDIS better than he does. He can't regenerate well, Romana can regenerate better than he can. I'm like, wow, that says a lot. So,
And the thing about the thing, because she was a Time Lord, that was what I thought was the coolest thing. They were much more on an equal plane than many of the companions before that, where they're all human, and so he kind of keeps all these things. Here he's on an equal plane with her, and he can't get away with things with her. She calls him on stuff all the time, which I love seeing because when you have somebody that's that all-knowing, whatever, that much more powerful, it's wonderful to see when it's actually brought down a little bit, made to seem real, seem more human, and I think that's why I like her so much.
The one thing that I will say about too, again, a lot of times you'll watch these episodes, on a regular basis, catch things the second or third time around, and you don't catch it the first time. First, Romana 2 story. The enemy is a race of robots. But they are so human-like that I didn't even realize that, hey, she actually rips this robot's arm off. He's a person. So, you want this big bug that says, don't mess with Romana, she'll rip your arm off. That's funny. Again, as I said, she's very equal. You haven't seen anybody be close to equal to the doctor, and she's the truest equal because she's this fine lady.
Well,
Since Liz Shaw, the third doctor's first companion was a scientist in her own right, with multiple degrees, could keep up with him, never got to travel in the TARDIS. Very sad.
They ended up with the audio plays doing with Romana. She becomes president of the High Council.
The audio plays are problematic though, because I don't know where they really do fit.
Well, that's the thing, is that the implication is that she was president at the time that the Great Time War begins, but she's not president at the end of it, so something happens. But they basically did 3 whole series with her as president.
I really liked that too, and she has a great story arc in those audiobooks. As she at one point, you know, she's asked to give up her life, and I believe that's eventually what happens. Is Romana dies in the Time War, which is why we don't see her in the final David Tennant episode. There's one more thing I want to say about Romana's story arc, which is I would just add that yes, she was on equal footing with the Doctor, but that her character, when she first got there, she felt like she was actually higher up than the Doctor, which is something we really hadn't seen, because she was ordered to be with him by the High Council. Like, she was the one who came, she thought she was coming from the White Guardian and the High Council and saying, you need to do this, we need to go get the key to time, you know, and she was the one who had all the information. The Doctor hated that, because he was like, where are we going? I don't know. She's like, I know what we're doing, you know, which was totally, you know, and she was very much like, you know, we knew at that point, you know, that he was a loner, he hated, you know, he didn't like getting involved in the politics of Gallifrey and all this stuff. And she was like, no, you need to play by the rules. This is what we do on Gallifrey. These are the protocols. And it was really interesting to watch this story arc, because she thought she was there to change the Doctor. And by the end, she was the one who got changed. And she was much more like, oh, these people aren't ants. You know, and like it's really, I thought that was really cool.
I didn't.
Definitely see the transition in like the pirate planet. Like, she's starting to like really get it.
Yeah, you know, I was going to say, I know that we only have 3 left lists, and I know we're about halfway through, so I know we want to start talking about the new Who, but I'm just curious, how many people here have seen the original Doctor Who? Okay, nice. All right, so, all right. And hopefully for the rest of you, we're not boring you. But there are some other companions that I would just like to do a quick hit on for the original series. Yeah, because after Susan, like Vicky, I love Vicky. She was very plucky. You know, there were a lot of young women, but again, they weren't stupid. They weren't dressed in skimpy clothing. You know, like it was like they were there for their brains or their bravery. You know, like it was really awesome. My favorite probably is Zoe. You know, yeah, Zoe. She's another genius, mathematical genius who, you know, the Doctor trusts her. You know, similar to the way he trusts Nissa, you know, taught Nissa to fly the TARDIS, you know, in his 5th generation. So she was a second Doctor companion. You know, I loved her. 3rd Doctor was my first Doctor, and I thought he had amazing companions. You know, we've already mentioned Liz Shaw, who was a scientist in her own right. We've talked about Sarah Jane, who was an investigative journalist, and constantly was like telling the Doctor, no, you're not going to keep me safe. I can handle myself. I don't need a man to, like, she was awesome. But there was also Jo Grant, who was she was a difference, because I remember, like, I first thought, like, wait, I don't get it. She did seem a little like an airhead, and kind of, you know, she was about fashion and all this kind of stuff, and she wore mini skirts and all this kind of stuff. And it's not the first time. I seem to recall the 1st and 2nd Doctor, there was Ben and Polly, if I remember correctly, started out as a go-go dancer. So, you know, like, it's not the first time. But Jo Grant had a lot of heart.
Yes.
She was another character that they married off, you know, so, like, but she also, like, kept the Doctor grounded and was able to, like, go investigate on her own. She did a lot of screaming, but, you know, but I really liked her. So.
With Jo Grant, she's one of the few companions that we actually saw grow, because towards the end of her reign, she learned how to resist the Master. You don't usually see that kind of growth in the character.
Jo always depended on who was writing her. Yeah. She behaved differently every story.
Yeah.
So
She was originally an agent of unit.
Yeah, she was. Yeah. She was a trained safecracker. You know, she was trained in, you know, whatever spyology. You know, she had a whole ring of skeleton keys, et cetera, you know, and she should have been, you know, strong and such, but she did actually get the job by asking her uncle for it.
Sarah Jane Adventure.
Right.
The Doctor's Funeral. I'm trying to remember what it is, but she comes back.
Exactly. Yeah. So they did marry her off, but it's another woman. It's another Carol on stage town. She's very much, you know, a Rose prototype.
Yeah. And then, of course, people had mentioned Leela, who's another fourth Doctor companion. Is there a picture? There's a picture of her. Okay, so here's the one that I knew. It was like,
There are pictures of all.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, so, you know, this was a skimpier costume, but she was this amazing warrior, you know. I mean, there's definitely stuff that we can talk about, like pros and cons both ways. The fact that, you know, there were all these issues about, you know, was she a savage? Was she not? She was constantly fighting against that. She, you know, was like, oh, you know, Doctor, you're treating me like I'm stupid, you know, all this kind of stuff. But she was amazingly brave and resourceful. You know, there was, there was a lot of going back and forth about her first instinct was to pull out her knife and, you know, want to kill somebody. And the Doctor was always like, wait, you know. But it made for some really nice moments. And again, her character got to grow too, and she ended up married to a Time Lord. So, you know, like, it's amazing. You know, the Doctor went back to Gallifrey where that was the episode where he became president of Gallifrey, which he hates. But Leela fell in love with Andred, the captain of the guard, and she decided to stay on Gallifrey, which is a long way from where she came from too. So, you know, again, they're marrying off female companions, but, you know, there were still a lot of great adventures with her. So, yeah, and then for Fifth Doctor, you know, the Fifth Doctor was my favorite for a long time, actually until David Tennant. You know, his companions, Nyssa, Tegan, Perry, you know, there was some interesting stuff there with, Tegan was a flight attendant, and they definitely talked about the, you know, they talked about the sexism in her job, and she talked about it in interviews afterwards and things like that. Also, the fact that she was Australian, you know, and there is some British-Australian rivalry that they were working out for the show, so that was pretty cool. You know, Nyssa, again, she's genius. Perry was interesting, because Perry, again, you got back to the companion who maybe wasn't, you know, she wasn't as educated and as smart, and they dressed her in skimpy clothes all the time, and, you know, she talked about it, she did talk about it. She's like, why do I have to freeze all the time? Because, like, you know, I'm wearing these ridiculous, you know, I'm always wearing these ballet, you know, suits, and like, it's like, so, but it was interesting, but she went through the regeneration from the 5th Doctor to the 6th Doctor, and, you know, she also went through another story arc, yeah.
Perry.
Yeah, and then, you know, 6th Doctor, Perry, and Melanie towards the end, whose mission was to get the Doctor in shape and constantly offering him carrot juice. Yeah, that was, Bonnie Langford was not my favorite. She was not my favorite companion, but she grew on me. And then, you know, but I go right to Ace for Sylvester McCoy. Like, you know, Nitro, you know, give her a can of Nitro 9 and
And it's Deluxe with a baseball bat.
yeah, I was like, that's pretty awesome, you know, so, yeah.
Laura Macy's big thing was that she liked to blow shit up.
Yeah. What's not to love?
She was a delinquent.
So it's a very quick overview.
Nell may have suffered on TV, but she excelled on audio.
Yeah.
And we got him back there. Yep.
You said earlier that there were most of the women who weren't companions in the 6th and 7th Doctor were antagonists, but I feel like I haven't watched a whole lot of 6 and 7, but I feel like I should mention Brigadier Gonzara from Battlefield, who like was the head of unit, and like she was, I don't think she was an antagonist at all. So I don't know if that pattern is completely holds.
No,
Yeah.
oh yeah, she's the only one though, and she gets only halfway there because she's overshadowed by the Doctor playing, you know, essentially being puppet master here, there, and everywhere. There's so many characters in there in that particular story that while she's interesting, I don't know that the actress got to do as much with her as she could have. I'd like to see the character again in the modern day.
So I'm going to go ahead and move on to some newer stuff because poor Caroline hasn't had a chance to talk at all. So we're going to start with non-companions, again, like we did with the older stuff. So the first one on my list has to be River Song. Fascinating. Who knew from like the start that she was the doctor's wife. Like, who knew?
Like
from the
feeling that she's gonna be
kind of, like, first, like, 5 year, like, when she starts, she knew how, she had the sonic screwdriver and everything, and we were like, wait a minute.
Yeah. I remember hearing rumors before, like, she's going to be the next doctor. Yay, we're finally going to get a female doctor, which would have been awesome too, but
I was like, I don't think she was a time lady.
yeah.
Well, as far as being Melody Pond, that I didn't see coming. But the doctor, being involved with the doctor in that way was definitely something I saw coming like a mile away.
I predicted Melody Pond.
I didn't predict that. No.
I told my daughter, and they were like, where? Actually, they were showing me, they had already seen it, they already knew, because we don't keep up with it in the series, and I predicted that, and they were like, where did you get that?
And there were the TARDIS, the doctor's wife. That is like
everybody was
yeah.
Well, the fact that the TARDIS, it's the first time we put almost like some kind of humanity into the TARDIS. Like we know it's a she. It was super cute episode.
He's been doing that.
He's been calling her the old girl for a very, very long time. So it was. This was like, for whether you had just started watching Doctor Who or whether you've been watching since the original series, there was payoff. And I think we were all sitting in front of our TVs going, you know, and again, you have the TARDIS personified as a strong woman, resourceful, helping the Doctor. You know.
Well, it goes one better though. It proves that it's not his fault that he can't fly the TARDIS.
Yeah.
The TARDIS takes him wherever she thinks that he's supposed to go.
I love that.
There's definitely a certain, like, kind of a gullibility, at least, to the snarkiness about her, which I liked her, like, really subtly. I don't know. Did
anybody else want to? No.
I like that she seemed to understand more about time than he did, and she's archived versions of herself that haven't happened yet. And he's like, you can't do that.
And my personal favorite line from that episode was always when she referred to herself as home.
Yeah.
Because you run around and bring home strays. And that was
then we go on to Vastra and Jenny. Woo! Interspecies lesbian couple. I was so thrilled. I thought they were so cool. Two extremely strong women, one not human, one human.
The most recent Christmas episode.
Yeah, this is the most recent Christmas episode. I haven't seen it. And the fact that she announces, she knocks on someone's door and she says, "I'm Vastra, and this is my wife." It's like you're in Victorian England.
Your aspersions on my character were married.
So that they just thrilled the heck out of me, and it was the best thing ever. Anybody else? Yeah, ditto.
Jenny, the doctor's daughter.
The doctor's daughter married the doctor and had the doctor's daughter.
For those people who don't know what we're talking about, in real life, the woman who played Jenny married David Tennant. Jenny, the woman who played Jenny, is also Peter Davison, the fifth Doctor's daughter.
Georgia
in real life.
Moffat.
So,
Schoolmates and friends with another actor who played the doctor's daughter.
But I thought that was a really cool episode because you really start to get to know this girl and you're like, I like her. And you're like, oh, she's going to travel, she's going to be a companion. And then she does, so we're so upset. You get that cool little tidbit at the end. We're like, oh my god, she's a Time Lord now.
Yeah.
I'd like to see her again.
I'd like to see if something with her and Osmond. Because they're sitting in the same chair. I don't know if that's because BBC has like a really small problem. Small batteries. That was cool. I don't know. I just feel like there's something there, and she tells him to run.
Yeah.
As an interesting aside, Doctor Who was actually, back in the old days, the most expensive show produced by the BBC. Despite how lousy the special effects, it was the most expensive program.
I liked the wobbly sets.
I love them.
I am so sick of hearing about the wobbly sets.
Why do you
I
call?
liked them.
Yeah. I'm a rubber arm.
The Aztecs where they're having to move this supposedly really heavy stone tile, and it's obvious he's trying to act this, and it's obviously styrofoam. Yeah, it's well painted, it's beautifully done, but it's obviously styrofoam.
No, I agree. I would go right there with you. There's actually, in this book here, the Chipstick Time Wars books, the very first one you read, she talks about when she got into Doctor Who and she was watching PBS and there was this clearly fake like sea monster. She's like, and it's fake and it's clearly like a paper shadow, but I loved it. One really quick I did put on the list was Ringette, Madame de Pompadour. Probably because everybody likes the girl in the fireplace. But it's the first time we really see it. We kind of see this, at least in the newer stuff. We kind of see this like relationship building where he says, "Okay, I'll come get you," and it's the like realization like you can't be with a doctor. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't. And while that happens time and time again, I really feel that's a really good example.
She was an incredible woman in real life.
Yeah.
And if you're going to pick out any historical character to put in that story, you know, she was marvelous.
The story was so well written too. I mean, I think that's really what helped. It was well acted and well written, and that's why the writer Stephen Moffat, like that's why everybody's all like, oh, Moffat, because I gotta say, it may not be
about Moffat.
Yeah, and I have to say, like, even though I'm all like, I'm all about the strong, independent women in Doctor Who, and I gotta say, one of my favorite lines was, I just snogged Madame de Pompadour.
Fanboy sometimes. And then we're going to talk about Harriet Jones.
Harriet Jones, podcast.
Yes. It was interesting because when I watched the first episode of 10th Doctor with my wife, she got very upset with him and it actually took against him immediately because of what he does to her at the end of that episode. And I didn't like it either, and I in some ways I understand it, in other ways I think he went too far. But the fact that she comes back and helps despite that is, to me, what really says a lot about her. That she did not hold that against either the world or him, and that she came back and fought.
I wouldn't really say, did she fight?
She didn't fight, she came back and...
Well, she
I thought she established a communication network and then distracted the Daleks for a bit.
Find out.
We just have a hand over there.
I also love the fact that she is the only person who can turn down Captain Jack Harkness.
I mean, I will say, I think that, it's clear. It doesn't surprise me that she came back the way she did in that season finale, because she always did everything she did was because she believed in protecting people and helping people. Like that was why she became. That's why she became part of the cabinet in the first place. Was like she was all like, I'm new and I'm going to help, and then she's like, oh, I'm prime minister. What do I do?
It happens all the time. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm prime minister.
And it was really I'm going to make the best of this. I'm going to learn. I'm going to do the best I can. And I didn't necessarily agree with her either. But she was doing the best she could in that situation, and it was all coming from a place of, I want to save humanity. We're in danger. Blah blah. So it doesn't surprise me at all that she was like doing that at the end.
Yeah, and I have to say, it's also one of the great things about her is when she does come back, and she does even say, even in spite of everything that happened with losing her position, she still does not regret or look back on what she had to do, because she decided, I need to do this to protect the human race. I don't regret it, you know, but I understand that everyone disagrees, but I had to do what I had to do.
And she believed in having, you know, like when she shot that ship down, it was about the human race having the power to protect itself, because you can't actually count on the Doctor always being there. And, you know, and she was about that. She like symbolized that while not being about getting power for herself. That just sort of happened to her. So, you know, she was like a remarkably innocent example of wanting to gain power. I also feel like part of the reason the Doctor tore her down was not out of concern for doing the right thing, but because she totally stole his thunder.
That was in there.
And then just, I had on my list all the companions from the new Doctor Who, because it's hard to choose one, and there's really only like 5 now, technically, because of Oswin. I can't really pick, I couldn't pick a favorite. The big reason I want to say I really liked Rose is because of this whole, like, unspoken potential maybe kind of romance thing. Like, yeah, because like it was there, but it wasn't. No, that she took Canton. Like it was there, but it wasn't like specifically like. Did it happen? I guess is what.
And they were confirmed. Billy Piper and David Tennant officially confirmed for the 15th anniversary contract.
Yeah. And then probably because I
You were not fans of Rose.
Why?
Okay. Fair enough.
Everybody worked in a shop, and then she's like, "Do you like my dog?" Like, it's like, I love her.
Yeah, I don't, as I said, I liked, again, drawing the parallels to Third Doctor Joe Grant, even though that never came to out romance. The guy that Joe Grant married reminded her of a younger Doctor. You know, and that's why she went off with him. You know, the Doctor just never actually said anything. So feeling, again, with the Ninth Doctor desperately needing something to hold on to, it was, oh, the world is gone. So the original idea of Rose, I don't have a problem. Later stuff, so romance is nice, etc., but I don't know that she actually, she got the, here's my gun, you like it, development, but I don't know that there was as much development as a Donna Noble.
Yeah, I have to say, like, in terms of, like, because I think that it is a little hard to talk about, you know, just one, like, it does, like, I do tend to look at the new series as, because it's more compact, as, you know, as a whole thing, so, but I gotta say, like, I was getting a little tired of it was like, please have a companion who's not romantically involved with the Doctor. Like, I'm done with this, I'm over it.
Martha was so, well, see, the thing Martha was such a rebound.
I love what they did with Donna, where Donna said what half the audience was thinking, like, I'm not going to sleep with you. I have no romantic intentions towards you. Well, back off. I want to aim
I actually found Martha far more interesting than Rose because, I mean, Martha had substance. She was a doctor. She knew how to do things on her own. But yes, the whole thing with everybody being in love with the Doctor, the entire freaking planet.
Yeah.
It was so.
Because Doctor's so like, she's like, you know, my friend had this guy, and then he never would like. She tells this whole big story. The Doctor's like, you know, and somebody just won't look at you twice, and they won't, and he's just like, all right.
To be fair to Martha, though, large extent of it, she did tend to keep her feelings to herself. Even though she had all these feelings, she did to herself and walked away in the end. And I really respect her for that, which is nice because I've seen a lot of characters in other shows just kind of, I feel this way and therefore I'm going to act upon it. And she realized that he never wanted to reciprocate that, and so she did keep it to herself. And I have a lot of respect for her for that.
I also think that she actually was even more interesting after she ended up in unit.
Yeah. With Mickey of all people.
See, that I didn't like. I felt like that was a big disservice to there.
I agree. It was
Really did.
spare parent.
That felt like a
And
throwaway.
children.
That felt like a throwaway. For more reasons than we had time to get into.
Well,
but-
at least Martha walked away. Rose got like a clone doctor. I can't be with you, but here's kind of like my leftover.
Yeah. And I don't know if you guys had this experience, but my male friends who watched that show were like, I totally get that. And my female friends and I, we were all like, no, we understand why Rose was like, no, it's not the same thing. And they're like, no, it's all the same thing. So I don't know if anybody else had that experience, but I was like, it was very interesting. How
I know I've never gotten a clone of a significant other, so I can't speak for personal
But we are working on this.
I
and
just
so
try very hard not to think about it.
Just regarding Martha, I had the sense that yes, she had a lot more background. She was a doctor on her own. She had, and in the end, she walked away. But the writing for her was always so much about her adoration for the doctor.
Yeah.
I mean, the writing didn't give her the opportunity to self-fulfillment. To
yes,
self-express.
To be anything.
I don't know, there were the episodes in the school before the Great War where I thought Martha came off pretty well.
Yeah.
I also thought that they were going to have the doctor make the nurse at the school and produce the child that would produce Susan. I was hoping they were the timing would have worked out. It would have been about a 15-year-old girl in 1963.
Yeah.
Let's write them a letter.
I rewrite episodes all the time.
And then Martha. Martha. Donna. Well, did they see? I didn't like Donna at first. She had to grow on me.
That's what she did. Yeah.
It's like the most important woman in the universe.
Yeah.
It's just so awesome.
I think for me, and I'll say this very quickly, is that I'm not quite sure why or how it happened this way. But I know, it's because we didn't get these. It wasn't on BBC America at that point. But and so we were seeing it much later. I actually saw the Children in Need special with Donna and David Tennant before I saw her as the companion.
Yes.
If you haven't seen it,
Oh my God.
Google it.
Yeah.
It is hilarious. But yeah, it is freaking hilarious. So if you've seen, so that's why. So I knew that Catherine Tate was a comedian, and I knew she was really well respected, but I didn't know what was going on in Doctor Who. And then when I saw her, I was hooked because she was independent. She was flaming red hair, and she was like brassy and like.
Donna had an internal life, is what she had.
Yes.
Sensible clothing.
Yeah. Here. It's cold. I'm putting on a jacket.
As a very, very quick aside, Catherine Tate and David Tennant in Much Ado About Nothing. Phenomenal.
I haven't seen it.
She tells me
It's on my list.
your wedding dress.
Have such great chemistry.
They're really funny together.
They are very.
And my scene still, back to that scene, you want Amy? Like, that's my favorite thing in the whole world. I laugh every time. And then we jump right back into Amy Pond, who had a thing for the doctor, kind of me, but like, I don't know.
Again.
I don't think
I just wanted to like face rape him. I like on her wedding, the night before her wedding, she like makes out with her.
Yeah.
Scared Moffat about the wedding.
Because
So she has to turn her
Stephen
attention.
Moffat wants to kiss her.
I think maybe it was like.
I feel like Amy is my favorite. I just really like her, and I like the whole storyline of her coming into play as a child. And she's just so adorable, sitting there and waiting for him.
Yeah, her cousin.
Oh no way.
Because Yeah. they couldn't find a kid with her accent, so they're like, hey, do you have any younger siblings? This is her nephews.
Actually, no, they never met.
Oh.
They never met. They met on the set, and that's when they realized they were cousins.
That's awesome. That's very cool. I did not know that.
I don't know why I like Amy so much. I just really, really do.
I would have rather had Amelia Pond as a companion instead of Amy.
You're not the only one, guys.
Yeah, but the working hours for children.
The thing about Amy is that she is so strong, and it's hard. I can't put my finger on it either.
I just
There's
really like her.
something about her that she's very interesting. And she isn't afraid to be who she is.
She's
It's
not
kind of like,
nice.
Yeah.
she is who she is and she doesn't.
She doesn't have to hide it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mom said, my mom here said she's not nice. She's right. Amy's not nice.
She doesn't censor herself, she doesn't hold back on it.
I think it's also interesting to note that with Amy and Rory, we also get to see companions living their lives separate from the doctor, which we hadn't really gotten to see before.
We're running out of time. Go ahead. Yeah.
I liked Amy and Rory. Amy and Rory are my favorite companion. Yeah. And then just Amy alone.
And obviously I threw Osmond on the list even though we're running out of time. There's not much to be said about her because we don't really know her yet, and I'm naturally brunette, so I'm really happy for a brunette companion.
And I'm very excited to see where this
Well, we'll get to know more about Osmond tonight.
Yes!
I think she's the computer.
Oh, yeah. Can I just say one last thing? I just want to say thank you guys. You've been phenomenal.
And now try to
Thanks for asking me to be a part of Dr. Who Club. And we have business cards and postcards there with our website address, our social media addresses. We're also, together with Annie's Book Stop, Geeky Bling, and Memes Mugs, are in dealer room B, as in boy. It's like on that side of the building on the first floor. Also, at 1 o'clock, there's another panel, 50th anniversary of Doctor Who, in this other room. And 2:30 in front of Sealy is a meetup of Doctor Who Club. Whoever wants to come is welcome. At 9:30 we're going to watch the episode, but to find out where, because it's at a private residence, you have to sign up for the group. There's no charge, but you can RSVP that way. And there's a meetup at 6 p.m. with Western Mass Sci-Fi Group at Pizza Amore, which is across the street. And at 8 o'clock is Burlesque, which is a few people from our group are in that.